Hi, welcome back to another episode of Leadership Lenses, our 15-minute podcast for Jewish educational leaders, principals, heads of school, Rosh Yeshivas, and anyone else who wants to improve their local community day school. We have a wonderful guest with us today, Dina Rabhan, whom I met first in her capacity at the YU School Partnership. Dina has since moved from YU to Israel and now works as a transformation and growth executive, a turnaround CEO, which basically means she goes into things that are broken, comes into your company organization, fixes what's needed, and heads out to the next one, which is pretty amazing, adventurous, exciting, and probably something a lot of schools could use. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dina.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for the lovely introduction.
So maybe just tell us like a minute or two about what it is you do in your day-to-day now in terms of this turnaround CEO thing.
Yeah, so it's funny because it's been a while since I've actually worked directly with schools, but schools were the training ground for everything that I know about leadership. And I'm sure you agree with me, Barry, that leadership is leadership is leadership. It literally doesn't matter where you're sitting. It is all 100% transferable. And I see it again and again, no matter what context I'm working in.
No, I totally agree. And I'd even say it from the other end. People who get involved in schools, educators, do it because they believe in growth, which means they believe in the ability of kids to change. And in my own career, I know that just extended to, well, I think I believe in the ability of adults to change also. And what fascinates me is how you create this change. And I think that's what a lot of school leaders are thinking about, but they're doing it in one of the most fast-paced, emotionally demanding, physically demanding settings possible that also infringes on all aspects of your personal life. And I think that a lot of heads of school I speak to certainly, often feel like they're doing it alone. And the irony is I had this earlier this summer. I was sitting with a head of school for like an 8-hour intensive session. And we brought in her leadership team, and she felt like she was alone and her team, wasn't there for her. And her team felt like, we love you. We're here for you. Take care of yourself. We want to support you. But like they weren't connecting and they really weren't functioning as a team. And so that's something that's been on my mind a lot. And I'm curious, as you go in externally, right? So what do you do coming in as an outsider to a place where stuff's probably broken and the most influential people are at the top and that's who you're working with? So what do you do?
So, okay, I'll answer directly this time. The direct answer is that I operate as either a fractional or an interim leader, which means that I'm brought in either as the lead, so would be the interim CEO, or I'm brought in to the executive team, so the leadership team, typically assuming a C-suite role, something that's either empty or added to be able to work very, very closely with the leadership and also to embed myself into the company, into the teams, into the rhythm, into the culture, to be able to drive change from within. It's something that I discovered is truly my sweet spot. I love the external coaching and the consulting that I've done for over 4+ years now, but where I really thrive, where I hit my flow zone is when I'm inside the company and can drive change. And it doesn't happen over a short period of time because it's every good school leader, anybody who's working in schools knows change is really challenging. And it also requires an incredible endurance because of the time that is necessary to exact change.
Can you tell us about, one role you were in? You don't have to divulge any confidential details, but one role you were in where you were working to build or rebuild a leadership team and how that went. What did you do to make it happen?
So before I answer that, I'm going to be a challenging. I'm a student.
A challenging interviewer. You're a challenging guest. It's all good. This is our podcast for the challenged.
Because I want to. You said something before, and I want to underscore it, which is that Barry, that I, having worked very deeply with schools. When I was at Yeshiva University, I was working with over 200 schools, hundreds of leaders over the course of many years. And while I was doing that work, my husband was a rabbi, a community rabbi, as well as a hospital rabbi. And we used to have a running joke that he didn't think it was funny, but the running joke was that the heads of school are the hardest job. They're just the hardest job. And since leaving the education sector and moving into media and the business sector and the tech sector with, working with people who have very demanding jobs, some private companies, some public companies, no matter what, no matter who I've interacted with, I am still committed to what you said earlier, which is that being a school leader is in a different stratosphere of the stressors and demands, the relentless stressors and demands that are often all consuming because not always, but frequently leaders are living in the communities that they're leading. So the job is never ending, and how taxing that is on leaders. And I think that as we talk about change and driving change on teams, I think the first step always, as you know, Barry, with the clients that you're working with and your experiences, number one is identifying and validating the unique demands of school leadership, which are really tough.
Absolutely. Okay, so we identify.
Yeah.
To me, those demands are like be everything to everyone, be everywhere all the time, inspire, right? You're always giving. It's very hard to find ways to get filled up. And I'll say something like a little bit, maybe controversial. I don't buy the work-life balance thing. In other words, you should have a work-life balance. You should have a great family life or work-life harmony, whatever you want to call it. I believe that you have to do something in the work setting that enables you to kind of have that ongoing energy. I think that's like that individual holding up a whole organization is the thing that makes school leadership, like you said, the hardest leadership role there is.
But I think that that's not unique to school leadership. I think that when you're the number one of any company, organization, doesn't matter where you are, when you're the number one, no matter what, the buck stops with you, and the ultimate responsibility lies on your shoulders. And therefore, even when you have a spectacular team, which is the work that I'm focused on, even when you've got everything right, everything is lined up, there will always be an inherent loneliness to that role, which requires leaders to find whether it's really good coaches,
PLC, peer groups.
Which I have a friend who runs CEO peer groups, because there really is no replacement, no matter how close you are with your team. And that is the goal. The goal is to have a close-knit, fully aligned executive leadership team, your cabinet, where you feel like there is incredibly high trust and all the necessary things. And no matter what, even with all of those things perfectly in place and perfectly achieved, you still need contemporaries. You really need peers to be able to talk about the things that leaders just simply cannot talk about or their team simply can't relate to. So I think that that's something that I try to remind leaders when they feel the overwhelming sense of loneliness, that that's classic. I always say to people, I know it might hurt your feelings, but you're not unique. And either it'll hurt your feelings.
You're unique, just like everybody else.
Right, exactly. Or you're unique, but your challenges are not unique. And right. Therefore, it's to help really diminish the loneliness that people feel. But part of the human condition is feeling isolated and alone in the challenges that we face. And that makes it so much worse. And the second that you discover that other people have this, share this, think this, have experienced this, immediately that sense of validation helps the isolation be reduced. So
I totally, first of all, shout out to leadership coaches. That's what I do in my day job, but I'm not podcasting.
I know, I'm not promoting it, but promoting
it. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'll pay you after. So I started off working mostly with like new heads. Hey, you're coming in. This is new. This is something to learn. I would say most of my coaching clients right now have upwards of 20 years of experience in principal or headship roles. And they actually come to coaching saying, I've had enough experience that now I finally understand the benefit of what coaching is. Yeah, I could learn the job on my own, but I can't survive it on my own for 3 decades. And from my perspective, first of all, I'm always humbled when anyone wants to do coaching, but certainly people who are multiple decade veterans in the field. And what I'm doing is basically saying, okay, here's how it looks from outside. Here's how it looks when I'm not going to see that parent, board member, etc. in the grocery store tonight because I'm not in your community. I'm not under those stresses. And I've spoken to 10 other heads today. So here are those other, here are those other pieces. Obviously, I have to always be super careful about confidentiality, but certain challenges and trends of like, yeah, everyone felt like last week was a month long because the week of Labor Day, you had 4 days, you had to do about 30 days worth of work because school's starting, and you felt like you were burning the candle at all ends. Okay, you're not alone. That's huge. I want to jump back to something you said though, which is, even when we get the leadership team thing perfect, we still feel lonely. Yeah. So I don't believe we generally get the leadership team thing perfect. I believe we usually, I know I had this as a head. I had my high school principal, my middle school principal, my elementary school principal, my early childhood principal. They're amazing. They're great. They're sitting in my office, and each one of them is there with their own departmental hat on. And we kind of go around to the weekly admin meeting updating, and maybe I pull their ideas for, the theme of the school gala this year, or whatever it is, but that's not a team. And so I'm not part of a team. I'm interviewing individual people and getting input. In my first role, I don't think I ever really figured out how to transform them into a team. And I'd love to hear have you ever figured out how to do that or seen people how do you transform people with their own responsibilities into a sense of we also have a hat of being part of this leadership team group?
Mm-hmm. It's such a great question, Barry. And I'll quote one of my favorite leadership rebbes, Ted Lasso, who says, you have to be a work in progress, which means that there's no end.
I'm really trying to get the accent in my head, and I'm imagining myself with a mustache, a work in progress. So that is a counterintuitive point that I think almost every leader misses. And I literally had a conversation with a different head about this last week in a coaching session where they're dealing with this issue and they're saying, well, I can't voice these concerns to my leadership team. I have to protect them. I have to inspire them. I'm just gonna, totally deflate them. And I was saying to them, no, you have to be real with them. Don't tell them you want to quit tomorrow, but you have to say yeah, this is hard. The most powerful words sometimes at a leadership meeting are, this sucks. This is a really rough day, and we're going to admit it and be honest and then pull ourselves back up together. And a work in progress, encapsulate that. I've seen it help leadership teams, and it also then helps the leader. She's oh, I actually can be authentic with my team in an appropriate way that helps them and helps me.
Yeah, that just calls all of Brene Brown's work, and she's about to come out with a new leadership book.
I have it pre-ordered. You should too.
Oh yeah, I haven't pre-ordered it, but I listened to an interview that she gave this week about it. And that's, anybody who's read any of her materials or watched any of her TED Talks know that the most effective leaders are the leaders that can lean into comfortably and confidently into their vulnerability, into what she calls courageous leadership and courageous vulnerability, which means admitting when you don't know, admitting when things are difficult. But she's also very careful and intentional to say, do not overshare. You have to learn the art and science of it, that you can't be a puddle on the ground because you're overwhelmed and you're crying. My best move is a fetal position in my bed. Nobody's going to see that. And they don't need to know about that till years later when I'm reflecting on that experience.
Yes.
But they absolutely should know, and we should be sharing, leaders should be sharing when things are really challenging. And that's part of creating a psychologically safe environment. And I just actually posted this on LinkedIn today that leaders will joke with me sometimes after working with me, and they'll say, yes, we know, Dina, it's all our fault. It's all our fault. And I'll say, no, I'm not doing a good job. I'm not doing a good job if that's how you're feeling, that I'm blaming you for everything. The job of leadership is to understand the power and the responsibility, or the responsibility that comes with that power. and that when you're a leader, you actually can build a team. You can define how that team is going to be operating. You have enormous influence and control in many ways around how aligned and effective your leadership team will be, and then how that again cascades to the entire school, whether you're K through 12, whether you're K through 8, whether you're 9 through 12, whatever your situation is, there's a lot of opportunity. And I'd like to speak to that because I'm a really big fan of a business book that I think I've shared with you, Barry, called the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's meant for for-profit, small, medium businesses who basically hit a ceiling for growth, and it's the internal operating system, which sounds technical, and yet it's incredibly intuitive and just lays out a structure for how to get your team aligned, build the best team. And it really does start with setting your core values, setting your, what is your mission and vision, from those, your North Star, where are you looking to get to in 10 years? What do you want to be true in 10 years? So for schools, there's a lot of visioning that you can have for 10 years from now. That's really your North Star. And then it really encourages a 3-year plan and then a 1-year specific plan, which you break down into 12 months. It's really, really helpful. What it's taught me is that while there is an art to good leadership, I really like to minimize that, because then people can feel like, well, I don't have the it factor, or I don't have like whatever it is that's needed. Because what this book showed me is that a lot of it is science. It's just getting the right systems into place. And as soon as those systems are in place, it's magical how things can transform for your team.
Yeah. Yeah. So 100%. I believe there's one school that I know of in the Jewish day school world that's tried to implement entrepreneurial operating system, EOS. Hopefully we'll have them on actually in another episode or two of the podcast. So come join the other episodes if you want to learn about that.
I'm curious.
I'm
I have a
going
lot
keep
to
that.
say. I have to put a little asterisk there. Like, there are some people who are very orthodox about its implementation, like rigid about its implementation. That's probably not the best way of saying it, but dogmatic is the better word. And like any system, I think systems have to be breathable and bendable. And so while I love the system, I always tell people I do not recommend it ever to just follow everything to a T. You have to read it, consume it, and decide how it can be implemented and functional for your particular scenario, and to be careful not to fall into the dogma of it, which sometimes, disregards the realities on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that brings us to one of the key challenges of school. And we'll wrap up with this note, which is that one of the other reasons school leadership is so hard is you just don't have time to meet with people. Like, when I left the inside the school world and went to an organization for the first time, I was like, oh, we got time. I'm drinking 6 cups of coffee a day because I have time. As a school head, I had 1 cup of coffee a day, and it was cold because I started it at 7 a.m. and only got to sit down and finish it at like 5 p.m. when I got back to my office. Yeah. So you don't have time, which means you have to really sanctify, really make sacred those meeting spaces and times and use them wisely. I just want to go back to that point, one of the points you quoted from Brene Brown, because I think it's crucial. Vulnerability is not oversharing. Those are 2 different things. It's not just spewing everything that happened to you that day. Vulnerability is being authentic about your own struggles. And the other point you said, which I want to underscore again, is if you as a leader are saying to your team, it's okay to fail, it's okay to struggle, but you never show yourself struggling, they're not going to be comfortable doing it, and you're not going to have a team. I know many young leaders fall into that trap. I fell into it myself for a long time of I got it. I'm, superhero here. I can do this. And people around you, you think you're protecting them, but you're really just intimidating them and creating a situation where they don't feel safe. And the moment you share appropriately in work context and say, it's hard for me too, ABC, I'm struggling with, let's talk about it together, it transforms the conversation. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to cut us off now because
I know it's a 15-minute podcast, but I love talking about leadership.
I'll just end by saying, it is doable. And Dina, in addition to giving us the time today, I want to personally thank you for that kind of encouragement and inspiration, which you've given me over the last multiple decades at this point. I'd love to advertise your services, but you're doing this just as a, volunteer for the greater good because you're out there running, corporations right now. But I'll still tell you guys, anybody listening, feel free to bother Dina. She gives amazing advice. I just put it out there. She's on LinkedIn. Look her up, Dina Rabhan on LinkedIn. Try these out. Let us know how it goes. You can always find me, Barry Kislowitz, at LinkedIn. Leadership Lenses, our Substack, or our website, Kislowitz Consulting.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.